So the Nintendo Switch 2 dev kit situation has been downright bizarre for a lot of people. And I've been saying for a while now that I think there is some sort of restriction on dev kits. I don't think Nintendo has been very forthcoming with them. And, some people listen to what I had to say, some people not so much. But when bigger outlets come along and kind of confirm things that I've been talking about before, it is a very nice feeling because, yes, there is indeed something weird going on with the Nintendo Switch 2 dev kits. And it was something that I immediately noticed, very similar to how the Switch 1 rollout was, with essentially how the Switch 1, you got games from certain companies at that first Nintendo Direct, and then those third-party games were pretty much the backbone of the third party for the first year, and then after that, it seemed like other developers started developing for the Switch 1. Now, at that time, it definitely more so seemed like something that was just happening because developers were hesitant to jump on board with the Switch 1 after the situation with the Wii U. So not many people really questioned it. But when I saw the Nintendo Switch 2 initial direct, I immediately got similar feelings once again when they started showing the third-party games. And I was like, damn, a lot of these companies are the same companies that were right there on board with the Nintendo Switch 1. And I know so many people are asking, well, where's this game? Where's this game? This game just got announced. Where's the Nintendo Switch 2 version? Why aren't companies putting everything on the Switch 2? Digital Foundry went to Gamescom 2025 and had some discussions with various developers there that's kind of the big meeting point now is essentially Gamescom. Like ever since E3 went away, a lot of developers have lost that outlet to talk with individuals and talk with other developers, unless I guess they want to do it on Discord or something like that. But Digital Foundry did some asking about the Nintendo Switch 2 dev kit situation and came to some very interesting conclusions based on what they were told from various developers. So I'll have a link to their information in the description box down below. But first, we've got to get into today's video sponsor. I'm 40, I'm single, I can't cook, and fast food isn't good for me. So what do? You team up with Factor, pal. Factor is by far the easiest and most convenient way to eat clean and delicious food without the hassle of cooking. Choose the meals you want from the 80-plus rotating weekly meals on their website, and they're shipped right to your front door. They have tons of different meal options for things like allergies or certain diets as well. I think I'll go with some barbecue chicken for my first meal, though. Cooking consists of opening up your microwave, inserting the meal, turning the timer on for about 2 minutes or so to cook, and then you can sit back and relax as your food is being prepared. When the time is up, take your food out, sit down, and it's time to feast with delicious chef-inspired meals. And yes, this barbecue chicken is absolutely banging and a very nice portion size too. So head on over to factor75.com or click the link below and use the code RGTFB50 to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code RGTFB50 at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. Skip the fast food, start eating better and cleaner, and a huge thank you to Factor for sponsoring today's video. The first bit of information comes to us from John Linneman, who actually very nice guy. I reached out to him about something. He got back with me. Most people have me blocked on social media, so if I'm not blocked, that's a win in my opinion. But Linneman said the following about the Switch 2 situation. There's been lots of talk about this lately, that Nintendo seems to almost be discouraging Switch 2 development to some degree. I've spoken with plenty of developers where they were told that their game, they should just ship it on Switch 1 and rely on backwards compatibility. There are lots of developers that are unable to get Switch 2 dev kits. We talked to a lot of devs at Gamescom this year, and so many of them have said the same thing. They want to ship on Switch 2. They would love to do Switch 2 versions. They can't get the hardware. It's really difficult right now. And I think the reaction to this online has been very peculiar to me because some people feel like it's sort of a gatekeeping for quality reasons. But if that's the case, then why are we seeing quality issues with some Nintendo Switch third-party games already? It doesn't really seem like that's a major factor here. It seems like Nintendo is just essentially being stingy with these dev kits. And when you watch these events like Gamescom and Summer Game Fest and probably the upcoming Game Awards, you're going to be wondering, where's that Switch 2 logo on these third-party games? And we've already seen instances where games are shipping that are compatible with the Switch 2, but they're Switch 1 versions, and they're just not up to snuff with other versions of the game. And these aren't necessarily like big AAA games. These are games like Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. These are games like Shinobi. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound is stuck at 30 frames per second on the Switch 2 because it's the Switch 1 version of the game. Shinobi, thankfully, is at 60 frames per second, but visual clarity can be a lot higher with that. Shinobi's an interesting case because obviously this is a Sega published game, but maybe that branch didn't have access to the Switch 2 dev kit, so they just did a Switch 1 version of the game. And there have been some questions raised by Digital Foundry about people who are essentially getting the dev kits and whether or not they should be getting the dev kits, I guess. This comes to us from Mackenzie at Digital Foundry. I think that's their last name. I don't really watch Digital Foundry. I'll watch it for like the Metal Gear thing and stuff like that, but I'm not very familiar with the faces and the personalities except for Linneman. Mackenzie says the following: I think they should get more dev kits out there, but I don't really know what Nintendo's mindset was with these decisions. So I don't really understand the strategy because, like you said, even now developers are struggling to get the system. And I know that some months ago we were hearing things through the grapevine and talking to people. There were some weird exclusions with some big developers struggling to get kits for games. And there are some of these kind of weird inclusions as well. Some indies were included, which is nice to see. But there's that Campfire game, the camera Campfire game, and they're getting kits. And some big developers, on the other hand, who develop AAA stuff, aren't necessarily in the pipeline for their kits. And that's kind of an interesting point to bring up, but that was actually because Oink Games is the company who did that Campfire game, and I was also very perplexed by that as well. It didn't really make much sense to me because of the fact that who's buying that game, but Oink Games is actually spearheaded by someone who worked on the original Chibi Robo on the GameCube, so kind of a loyalty thing. And when you kind of look and step back and look at the bigger picture, I do think that there is some sort of loyalty related thing as to who got Switch 2 dev kits first. I mean, another indie game that of course has a Switch 2 version is Mina the Hollower. Look at Yacht Club Games and look at the Shovel Knight IP. Shovel Knight was one of the biggest Wii U games, point blank, period. And that was a game that was, a huge spotlight was shown on it because Yacht Club was willing to make a game for Nintendo's struggling system. Yacht Club, of course, ended up getting a Shovel Knight amiibo for, Super Smash Brothers. So I understand a company like Yacht Club getting a dev kit. And no, it has nothing to do with Celia, but I understand a company like Yacht Club getting a dev kit. But I think to me, the weird thing is why are they so limited? Is there just a limited number of dev kits that you are making, or are you holding back those dev kits? Because I think those are two very different things. And I can't imagine that you would want to have a limited amount of dev kits. I would think the mentality would be you would want to have a plentiful amount of dev kits so that more companies are putting their games onto your platform. Because if a game is not available on the Nintendo Switch 2, but is available on other platforms, look, Nintendo's not in a position like a Sony or a Microsoft, especially, where Microsoft is like, just play our games wherever, we don't care, as long as it's an Xbox related game, then we're good to go. Sony kind of dipping their toes into that as well, but Nintendo, they still believe in console exclusives. They still believe in their hardware as being the place to only play, or the only place to play Nintendo games. So by kind of opening up this door a little bit, by kind of, letting these companies say, you can't ship on our system right now. Sorry. We got to let these other developers ship first. It's a very bizarre decision. It's something that I honestly don't really like, because I feel like, this should have been like overwhelming with the Switch 2 as far as titles were concerned from both third-party developers and Nintendo. Like, don't dictate, what the market is going to play when it comes to third-party games. Allow the third-party games to come out and then let consumers decide, what do we think is good? What do we think runs well on the Switch 2? What are the games that appeal to us? Instead of playing like a favoritism thing and seemingly limiting the amount of games that end up, releasing on your system. But, maybe my mentality is flawed. Maybe this is a good thing. I've seen people say, well, it's good. It's quality control. They should do that. And then you see, Bandai Namco doing Dragon Ball Sparking Zero at 810 resolution and 30 frames per second for the Switch 2 version. You see Madden, which is kind of all over the damn place. You see the upcoming FC 26, which is also allegedly 30. I don't know if that's a locked 30. If I'm judging by how Frostbite ran, it's probably not. So it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's very suspicious to me, and I don't really care for it. But maybe you think differently. Maybe you think this is a good thing. Let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Hit the bell as well. A huge thank you to Factoring for sponsoring today's video. They are also sponsoring my food for the next couple of days because, that food is banging, dog. Like, that food is mad good. So check out the information in the description box down below or in the pinned comment. And as always, guys, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.